You are at Late Rant, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Get or Shine, who said to rant about Get a Robo Armageddon. I said, will I be able to do this satisfyingly, only having seen the first episode? And he said, based on your write-up of Shin Mazinger from way back, definitely. So, here we go. I'm going to attempt. So, Get a Robo, long standing, super robot series, mangas from the 70s, I believe, written by Ken Ishikawa, who I think was like an understudy of Go Nagai or something like that. There was a collaboration between them. Go Nagai created Mazinger, which is a similar kind of story. Both of them are like, I guess what stands out to me the most about these things in retrospect is how the main characters are all like fucking insane people, like just violent sociopaths who pilot giant robots to save the world. But everything that I've seen of Get a Robo's different incarnations is just like violent madness, and of course, high scale, epic robot fighting. So this one, Get a Robo Armageddon, I guess was both a manga and anime series that came out in the late 90s, like 98, 99. I have to think that they came out partially because of Eva, because watching this OVA, it felt like it reminded me of how anime is a palindrome. Anime is always circling back in on itself in a way. It's an Ouroboros because obviously the works of Ken Ishikawa and Go Nagai were hugely influential on teams like Studio Gainax. I mean, Get a Robo has been cited as the direct influence of Gurren Lagann, for instance, and of course Anno has talked about Go Nagai. It's pretty obvious the influence of those stories on Eva. And yet, somehow it's come full circle here, because there are a bunch of like direct visual references to Eva in this first episode. Nothing like super overt, but you could definitely see some animation cuts that were mimicking stuff from End of Eva, which would have been freshly new at the time, particularly the Asuka versus the mass-produced Angels fight. And at the same time, though, this is very Yasuhiro Imagawa, who apparently directed the first 3 or 4 episodes of this OVA before, for some reason, leaving the team over some disagreements with them. I don't know what. But, Imagawa had just come off the heels of directing Giant Robo, which is also a big fucking 90s OVA series that is pretty fucking badass. And so this ends up feeling like a weird cross between like Giant Robo with like a hint of Eva thrown in, and like there's a bunch of Imagawa isms in there, stuff that you would see in G Gundam or Giant Robo, of like the use of scale, the way that characters are like projected over top of the robots, the way that people can just shout over vast distances to hear each other. The fact that it kind of cuts in media res, like this is a sequel to a show that's old as fuck, and like that's what makes all these Get a Robo and Mazinger sequels and shit so confusing, is that they are all presented as like direct sequels to another show, except that that other show has completely different staff behind it, is usually old as hell. There's usually been other incarnations, so it's hard to even tell which things go in which order. You kind of need a guide before you can really approach these universes. So like watching this episode, I was able to follow what's going on more or less, but I don't really know why anything's happening, or like what exactly are the stakes involved. Who are these characters and what is their background, because I haven't seen other incarnations of Get a Robo. So it's just it's madness on some level. It's not quite as madness as Shin Mazinger was, because Shin Mazinger was like, there was a lot fucking going on there. This one's a little easier to follow, but especially because there's just fewer characters. And I have seen the first couple episodes of Shin Get a Robo, so I had some sense of who the people are on some level. But yeah, overall, this OVA, visually very cool, lots of super striking imagery, lots of cool action scenes, great violence. I don't know if it'll hold up, because if Imagawa left, then, I don't know if that same strength of visuals could be upheld without him. I mean, he's replaced by a guy who later directed Shin Getter Robo, has done a bunch of other Super Robot stuff, so, you know, it's not as though it was left in the hands of someone unrelated to the genre, but I just have to wonder if anybody could really fill the shoes of Imagawa on a visual level. But yeah, it was pretty entertaining. I would say that, you know, I have an interest in eventually tackling like the Mazinger and Getter Robo universes and trying to wrap my head around all of it, because there's so much over so long of a time, and they're all so different from each other. And like, again, they act like they're sequels while at the same time sometimes shifting around elements of the story in a way that they couldn't truly be sequels. So I don't know how much that's the case here. But yeah, it was interesting to see something that is clearly a throwback while also being definitively 90s and paying homage to things that have paid homage to it in a way. It's always exciting to see that kind of stuff, so I thought that was fun.